Hi guys, welcome to the Data Science Festival, Winterfest, a week-long celebration of all things data themed around innovating data. We are live throughout the last week of November, so make sure you check out the other sessions happening across the summit. This is our last talk of the week, so yeah, we've got all of the sessions online for you to view, watch back. My name's Adam, and I'll be your host for this session. I'm currently a data scientist working for Hult International Business School. All sessions will be available to watch back until the 3rd of December, except for any talks marked as not recorded. There is also the option to upgrade your pass on our website to gain access to replays until May 2026. Just a couple of announcements. The Data Science Festival turns 10 next year. They'll be returning to Code Node in London on Saturday, the 16th of May for their 13th festival. Data Science Festival Big Birthday Bash. This will celebrate a major milestone, 10 years of the Data Science Festival and a decade of community learning and innovation. Attendees can look forward to a full day of tech talks, innovative companies, and meaningful networking, all completely free. In honor of the 10th birthday, the event will feature a celebratory theme with birthday party vibes. More details and the speaker lineup will be announced in 2026, but you can enter the ballot now on the website. Just another thing, as 2026 is set to be a big year at the Data Science Festival, they're looking for partners to join them for their biggest year yet. If you've enjoyed Data Science Festival Winterfest and you want to get involved, you want to get your company involved in the community, then don't hesitate to get in touch with us on the website. Just for your information, there will be a poll for this session. So I'm going to introduce our speaker now. So our speaker today is John Reis. He's a recovering data scientist with 20 years of experience in the data industry. He's a co-author of the best-selling O'Reilly book, Fundamentals of Data Engineering. He's also the instructor for the wildly popular Data Engineering Professional Certificate on Coursera in partnership with Deep Learning, AI, and AWS. Joe's extensive experience encompasses data engineering, data architecture, and machine learning, and a lot more. He regularly keynotes major data conferences globally, advises and invests in innovative data product companies, and is a writer on both practical data modeling and his own personal blog. He also hosts the popular data podcast, The Joe Reis Show, which you can check out on Spotify. In his free time, Joe is dedicated to writing new books and articles and thinking of ways to advance the data industry. If you can all, warmly give a nice reception for Joe, I'm going to welcome Joe to the stage now. Joe, it's all yours.
What's up, everybody? How you doing? Cool. Well, I'm gonna be giving probably a bit of a different talk. I don't have any slides. That's kind of the format I've been doing my talks lately. I just feel it allows me to kind of do what I do best, which is rant, kind of unencumbered about a topic. And in this case, we're going to be talking about a topic I've been talking about around the world for the last few months in different iterations, but it's what I call the Great Reset that's happening, right now in a variety of industries, including data, right? So, although this talk is titled the Great Data Engineering Reset, I feel that this also applies to data science and related fields, software engineering, and so forth. So, with that, let's get into it. There's a quote from the science fiction writer William Gibson that says the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And let me give you a few examples of this. The big one that when this first hit me was a few months ago. Was it 2.5 months ago or something like that? I was taking a Waymo actually, which is a driverless taxi, and it was probably an 8-minute drive or something like that. This is in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I was on my way to give a talk. And I was on my phone, actually, and I was chatting with Claude, uh, creating an app So vibe coding an app, walking through some ideas. It gave me some code, and then I deployed that code to GitHub while on my phone on an 8 minute self-driving taxi ride. And if you were to have that conversation, even 4 to 5 years ago, that would have sounded absolutely insane, right? That you, in an 8 minute span, created an entire application on your phone, talking with, just by typing something in, various commands, voice and, typed commands in a driverless car, right? That's crazy. So that wouldn't have been a topic of conversation a few years ago. And I'll give you another example, actually, from a couple of days ago. I was hanging out with my friend who, runs a very successful business, multi-million-dollar business. And he actually came to me the other day, or a few weeks ago, and he said, "Joe, I'm writing code." I said, "Oh, no, you're not," because that would he doesn't write code. He's not technical. And he showed me what he was doing this a few months ago, and he was using ChatGPT to create code that he could use to automate certain repetitive parts of his business. I thought that was pretty cool. I turned him on to Claude Code. He texted me the other day and told me to come into his office so he could show off what he was doing. And I thought that was pretty cool what I saw. He basically had used Claude Code to automate a very significant portion of, very what's very boring. Nobody wanted to do this work, taking a PDF and reading the information off of it, and then plugging the information into an Excel sheet, right? So, and then putting that into QuickBooks. With Claude Code, he was able to automate that entire workflow, such that saved that specific instance alone saved 30 to 40 hours a week of time, right? So multiply that by 50, $60 an hour you're paying somebody, and that yields very real benefits, right? And his employees are, also automating a lot of tasks with Claude Code, just tasks that nobody wants to do, right? And I think that's what I mean when the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. In this case, you have two different examples of one taking a self-driving car while writing code on a phone and deploying it to GitHub. In the other case, you're seeing, small businesses using tools like ChatGPT and Claude Code to automate, significant parts of the business that suck up a lot of time, nobody wants to do, and this is a giant superpower. And so, this is what I mean by the great reset that's happening right now. Is AI is, we're in a fundamental shift right now with what we'll be doing professionally going forward. And so, let me talk about a few angles of this, really. And so, data traditionally has sort of existed in two different buckets, right? The biggest one, these buckets are what I call enterprise land and product land. Enterprise land is what I'd refer to as internal facing data work, right? So this could be making reports, it could be doing data science or internal facing projects and so forth. In fact, the work that my friend did at his company, I'd call that enterprise land. You're basically operating as a cost center and hopefully making data useful in ways that impacts the bottom line. But this is very hard to tie back to data, oftentimes, right? The classic question in enterprise land is, am I getting value from my data and so forth? And so it's always a big question. On the other spectrum, there's product land. And product land is different. Data is the product, or it plays a central role in the product. So if you were to take an app like maybe Uber, for example, right, that's a data-powered application. Data is the product, and that powers the app. So there's no real ambiguity about the role that data plays in an application like Uber or Netflix or Amazon or something like that. And so these are the distinctions. But increasingly, what you're going to see is, especially with the ability to automate functions with AI and use AI to maybe get more insights from various types of data within the enterprise, within your companies, synthesize it, as well as giving people the opportunity to chat with their own data, to get their own insights. This is a fundamental shift that's going to be happening with how we interact with data, how we do our practice, as data engineers and data scientists and so forth. And so, so I think increasingly what we're going to move from are, enterprise land. Again, this is 99% of the companies, But and the classic play in enterprise land is playing defense, not offense. But increasingly, at the rate things are going with AI, we're going to be playing offense, not defense. This means data will become more front and center. And I'll talk more about what that means for you guys. But the important thing to know is we're at a major inflection point right now with how we're using data, the types of data that we're using, as well as the value we're going to get from it. And so, this challenges a few assumptions. In data engineering, for example, right, the classic, paradigms that have existed for decades have been, ETL. Its latest variant is ELT, which is extract load transform versus ETL, which is extract transform load. You have data warehousing. We still debate whether or not we should use star schemas or one big table or adopt a Bill Inman's data warehouse approach. And these are still important, but now you have lake houses, and increasingly with lake houses, you have the ability to store data in object storage as well as store not just tabular data, data that's in rows and columns, but also multimodal data, text, images, video, audio, and so forth. And increasingly, the big trend is we're going to be tying all this data together. AI will be able to make a lot of sense out of it. We're going to need more architectures, more newer ways of working with data, which we'll get into in a bit. But let's get back to the reset moment. I'm sure all of you remember when ChatGPT came out. It was around this time 3 years ago, actually. And I remember when it came out. I actually remember when GPT-3 came out. I thought that was interesting, but that was around COVID time. And me and my friends were on Zoom calls toying around with GPT-3 playgrounds and so forth, but I forgot about it actually. Right. And then GPT 3.5 was released with a web interface. And according to my some people I know actually who were part of that project, ChatGPT, or I guess it was called Chat with GPT. I think the expectation was maybe 10,000 people were going to use it. And then you kind of fast forward about a month or two, and it ended up being the biggest consumer application of all time in terms of adoption. You had 100 million people using it, I think by January. And so that set off this great interest in AI, because around that same time you got to remember the modern data stack and so forth was sort of on its way out, right? And data science, it was a popular field back in the 2010s. Data science is maturing as a field, and that was also sort of probably more maturing. I wouldn't say it's on the decline, but there were a lot of pressures at that time, 2022, because of rising interest rates and so forth. So much more emphasis on the bottom line, much more emphasis on getting value from data. And all of a sudden you have AI in the manifestation of large language models and diffusion models. And this set off an entirely new race where now everything is AI. I kind of lump in classical machine learning into this, unfortunately, but everyone's adopted the term AI. But what this means is now you have the consumerization of AI, which means that everybody is now using it. And what I've noticed too, is we moved from ChatGPT to Copilots. That was kind of the rage. 2022, 2023, like kind of early 24 to agents. Right now, agents are the hotness, and context engineering is the hotness right now, and so forth. But what you're seeing is the reset button has been hit all of a sudden, right? Especially with coding tools and the way we do things. I'm pretty sure everyone here is using some sort of AI coding assistant right now, whether you're using Copilot or agents to do your work. I don't know anyone who's not using them actually anymore, barring a few friends. But what this means is we're having to adopt new workflows, adopt new ways of doing things. And on my podcast, we had Tyler Akadow, actually, who's one of the best streaming engineers in the world, built a lot of the biggest, most popular streaming systems at the biggest companies. In that podcast, I thought it was interesting because even he said that AI has forced him to reevaluate how he does his work and so forth. So he felt like he was back at the starting line again. So I feel like everybody who's on this call here, in some way, shape, or form, we are all back at the starting line again, right? Again, the future is evenly distributed, or the future's already here. It's not evenly distributed. And what do I mean by this, right? You're seeing vendors. having to rework a lot of their current, their tooling. If they were around before the AI boom happened, every vendor right now is scrambling to find ways to make themselves relevant in an AI first world. A couple years ago, this meant putting a chatbot interface on the app. Now it's about having agentic workflows, and for the bold vendors out there, this means they're rethinking, what AI does to destroy their company and orient their company and their product in AI native ways. I think it's a very enlightened viewpoint. It's a very scary viewpoint for some companies, but that's the approach that I'm seeing a lot of successful vendors take, because you have to do away with the old assumptions and understand the world that you existed in is not the world you're in right now or the world you're going into. So that's the first reset that I'm seeing. The next one is, you're seeing companies and tools getting unprecedented traction right now. This actually, November also marks the anniversary of MCP, Model Context Protocol. Anthropic released that this time last year, and that's taken off as sort of a standard for interfacing with APIs, databases via a large language model. A friend of mine, Jeremiah Lowen, he runs a company called Prefect, or data orchestration company. On a whim, he created Fast MCP, which is a Python uh, a library that makes MCP easier to use. That was launched November last year, around the time of MCP, and now that's at 1 million downloads per day. That's insane, right? That would have taken you years to do back in the day. And now that's a year. Yeah, less than that, actually. It was probably like 8, 9 months when you hit that traction. You're seeing companies like Cursor, right, that are $1 billion run rate right now. They've only been around for a few years. It's insane just seeing the level of traction happening. OpenAI is, went from zero to $500 billion valuation in 3 years, right? And you're seeing companies from ex OpenAI alums, Thinking Machines raising the biggest seed round in history, $2 billion at a what, $9 or $10 billion valuation. I think here they're raising at 50, and they don't even really have a product yet. So yeah, this AI has ushered in just insane levels of speed. It's very, I wouldn't say it's not uncommon to see brand new startups accelerating to 1 million ARR in less than a year. And in fact, I hear that's the standard now. If you're going to raise money, you got to be at least 1 to 2 million in ARR to raise money right now, which is crazy. That would have taken you years. Now the expectation is you're going to move fast. I guess it also begs the question: are we in a bubble? Yeah, we definitely are. I think, but bubbles are you need bubbles to produce innovation, right? Without bubbles and the investment and the interest, you don't have the prerequisite to drive the lasting innovations that'll probably outlast whenever this bubble ends. I don't think the AI is going away. I don't think machine learning is going away. I think we're still at the very early stages. But if anyone has questions about my thoughts on the bubble, yeah, we absolutely are in one. But I guess the whole point is, yeah, the future didn't arrive gradually this time. It basically dropped a bomb and reset everything that we've been working on. And so this begs the question, right? Like, what's on the other side of this? Where do we go? What I feel right now is, I travel the world a lot, giving talks, meeting with practitioners, meeting with leaders, and meeting people outside of our industry too. I think that's also important to talk to people who are in areas that aren't really in our bubble. But I would say the overwhelming consensus is it feels like people are um, staring off into the void and sort of wondering what's on the other side of it. And so this is one of the central themes that I want to talk about is, there have been very few moments where we've had an inflection point like this hit so rapidly and so abruptly. And I've never had a situation where I meet so many people who are just confused about the future. And I'm sure a lot of you are too. What does the future hold for jobs? What does it mean for, you know, uh, how you work, or is there work to do at all, right? What are the new ways of working with data? Do robots just do everything? I think these are open-ended questions. But as I'm going to talk about in a bit, I think, to give you a sneak preview of that, the future is yours in some ways, right? That you don't. I think if everyone's in a situation where they're trying to figure things out, that's both a concern as well as a massive opportunity, which I'll talk more about in a bit. Um, but let's talk about kind of a tale of two worlds here to kind of bring it back. Um, because I think in the midst of staring off into the void, people often ask, like, what's going to last and what's not. Let me first talk about what doesn't change, at least in my estimation. I think the fundamentals are still gravity at the end of the day, right? I wrote a book called Fundamentals of Data Engineering. And as far as I can tell, that book is still highly relevant. It's still a bestseller to this day. And so that should probably tell you something about the state of people's desire to understand what the fundamentals are. I think when you're in a time when things are changing very quickly, it helps to go back to the fundamentals of your craft. So if you're in a data science field, for example, having a good grounding in just statistics, probabilities, the various classical machine learning methods as well as new ones, and even understanding the hardware side and how all that works. I think those are fundamentals that don't change no matter what. In data engineering, for example, right? Our book outlines the concepts of the data engineering lifecycle as well as its undercurrents. So the data engineering lifecycle, the TLDR, is you get data from somewhere, you do something to it, and you make it useful for downstream users. So that could be analytics, data scientists, machine learning models, reverse ETL, and so forth, right? But you're taking data, making it useful, and serving it. And along the way, undercutting all of this are things like what we call the undercurrents. So security, architecture, um, orchestration, data management, data ops, data governance, for example, right? All these undercut this life cycle, and in no sense do these go away, right? There's no situation where you would never have security, for example. That would be insane, right? And same with data governance. A lack of data governance would just be complete chaos. And so these are the fundamentals, at least of data engineering, right? And so these don't change. In fact, they become more important than ever in an AI world. But I do see people saying that it's the fundamentals don't matter, but at the end of the day, what does matter, and what you're seeing with AI especially, is the challenges are the same as they've ever been with any other IT initiative. Because although things are happening faster, and I think more with more force and with more money behind it, AI is still having challenges in terms of adoption. And this comes back to the principles of people, process, and technology. So if you think about the organization you work in or might work in, I guarantee you that the biggest problem you're going to face is not the AI itself. It's not the technology. It's usually the people. It's usually the way the organization is run and the processes that it has. I would urge you, if you're not familiar with it, to go study what's called Conway's Law, which says that we'll design systems and architectures according to the way that we communicate, right? So if you have a very siloed organization, the architectures and the systems you build will inherently be siloed. And that's just one example, but understand the lay of the land, understand the fundamentals. That's the big thing. But so what does change, right? I think there's a few things here. We're moving towards a world where we're going to need to rethink the types of architectures and the types of ways that we deal with data. In the past, the architectures we've had have been very deterministic, except machine learning models themselves, which are inherently probabilistic. But but we're moving towards a world where you're going to have agents working within architectures, working within systems, and these are essentially independent stochastic processes all running within your systems or your organization, accomplishing tasks. Uh, so that's the first big one to get out of the way. I also think that it's there's we're moving from a world where we dealt with tables, tabular data to multimodal data, which you talked about. Streaming data is going to become a first-class citizen. Um, it's not just SQL, it's not just Python anymore. We're talking about natural language, semantics, and agents. And this actually brings to an important point here. The new field that you're going to be learning about is knowledge, right? So you're probably seeing words like ontologies, taxonomies, and so forth floating around. And these are necessary prerequisites to providing the context, which is another word you're hearing, not just context in the sense of tokens, but context engineering, right? Giving the LLMs or the agents the proper context of its role of searching for data, of searching for various tools and resources that the agents need. It needs a context, and this is going to be more important, especially from a probably from a data science perspective as well. Um, and let me see here. Some other things that we need to clear up in terms of what's new is everyone is now a product manager in some sense. So you need to adopt product thinking. You need to adopt systems thinking. And what this means is when we have all these ingredients together, we build faster, right? But building faster itself is not the right proxy for success. Building things faster means you have faster iteration and faster learning. And if you couple all those together, that means you can actually build things better. So what I'm seeing is actually executives like C-level people using tools like Lovable, in my friend's case, Claude Code, to build prototypes, to build workflows, right? So I think the other thing that you're going to be seeing more of is the name of the game is show, don't tell. This is now the time when you need to be showing and giving demos of what it is you want to do, not just talking about it and whiteboarding it. That's certainly important to think through. But now you have the opportunity to see the art of the possible, to just have the AI write code, build a solution and build a prototype, check it out, right? So for data science the other day, actually, it's actually climbing with a friend of mine who's a professor, and he had a question about, whether Claude Code could solve a problem that he gives to his students for his causal inference class. I thought it was very interesting. So it was you know, basically a fish price example or something like that, sort of a price of fish, right? So in group A, the price is variable, and group B, the price is static, right? So you need to be able to do an analysis and figure out, different scenarios that he'd give you for this assignment. And we played with Claude Code for a bit in between our climbing sessions, and it actually spit out the correct analysis and data set, which I think he was surprised at. And so, but that gave him an opportunity to kind of poke around and see, okay, does this assignment make sense to give to students, for example, or and so forth. So I would urge you all to build as much as you can with AI, especially right now while it's cheap, while it's subsidized. I would say that's a really good opportunity to build. And building is going to be an interesting thing, right? And data engineering, we're moving towards what I call the postmodern data stack. And I know this term has been thrown around a bit, but I feel like this is now the term postmodern is actually appropriate in this case because if you looked at modernism, the movement back in the day, it was more about realism, about things are more objective, but postmodernism was really a reaction to that in the sense where things were a bit more silly, a bit more absurd. And I feel like AI introduces a bit of the absurdity to it, where it's because it's not deterministic, because it can hallucinate. I think the term postmodern is very appropriate. But what does this look like, right? We're moving from a world of I would say, passively viewing reports to a world where agents are going to be taking autonomous actions on our behalf. This means we need new architectures, we need new systems, we need new ways of interfacing with our existing systems. And so that's one of the big changes is we're things are just gonna be happening at a much faster pace, right? Again, knowledge orientation, not just data orientation. So your data warehouse, your data lakehouse becomes more of a knowledge lakehouse and warehouse and so forth. I also think you're going to be dealing with a lot more human and machine symbiosis, right? So humans might define the objectives and the constraints, but the agents, the AI is going to execute micro decisions, possibly thousands of times per minute, and optimize and refine those and so forth. So your data stack and your architecture becomes basically a living, breathing organism in some ways. And this is the big opportunity here. And again, when we talk about staring off into the void, what I'm talking about is these architectures and systems don't exist yet. So especially if you're early in your career and wondering what to do, right, and how you stand out, I would be going all in on this stuff right now. I would be looking at papers. There's a really good paper. Let me see if I can find the link here about AI overlords and architectures. Let me see here. It's from Berkeley. Super AI. But there was it's supporting our AI overlords, redesigning data systems be agent first. This came out end of August, but it was a group from Berkeley, including Matei Zaharia from Databricks, also the co-creator of Spark. But this paper, in and of itself outlines several new advances that we need with the architectures of the future, right? So, this comes back to the knowledge and semantics part. Agents don't think in terms of like we do. It needs semantics. But each agent is going to maybe be executing a slightly different variation of a command. And so, how do you know what that is? How do you route that to the database? How do you prevent databases from getting flooded, for example, right? That's one thing they proposed in this paper. I highly urge you to read it. I can put the link actually in the comments here. But I'd be studying a lot of this new stuff here and getting familiar with it and figuring out ways that you can, um, uh, you know, be a part of this new future. I know for me, that's what I'm focused on right now. I don't really care about what's happened in the past. Data warehousing is great, but my intention is to build the systems of the future and think about that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working on a book on data modeling right now. Obviously, approaching the old techniques, approaching the foundations, but also thinking about what's next and build, and I think more importantly, building what's next. And I think that's the message I want to impart with all of you is in the past you had to ask for permission from gatekeepers because there's a lot of historical legacy in terms of how we've done things, best practices. That's all kind of out the window, right? The fundamentals do remain. That's gravity, but the details in terms of the implementations and the technologies we use, that's all up in the air right now. Everyone's trying to think about this. And so if you're wondering how to get your start, right, or even if you're mid-career and wondering what to do next, I would say that's where I would be focusing. Building the next generation stuff. Again, building's cheap, right? Claude Code, Gemini, the Gemini CLI is a very generous free plan, but I'd be building, build. And this kind of brings me to one of the last points I have, which is the human opportunity, right? I think one of the concerns is that humans are going to be increasingly irrelevant in the world of AI. I think it's the exact opposite. I think, this gives you the chance to, like my friend in his small business, right? They're doing away with a lot of the work that's just pure toil that nobody wants to do. This frees people up to do the work that they need to be doing, the work that they never had a chance to do, right? But it's about craftsmanship. It's about understanding your domain and really, expressing your capabilities and yourself through that domain and through your skills. And so, I would urge you all to think about like what it is that you want to do. In this age where you're going to have the abundance of being able to build whatever you want. Now it's more about what's the connection to the field you're in and the things you want to do. What do you want to build? When building is cheap, so I think the human element matters more in a world where everything is instant and disposable. So anyway, I'd like to close by just saying, we're all back at the starting line, staring into the void, sort of wondering what's on the other side. But I don't think there's ever been an easier time to iterate and build the future and reinvent how we work and what we do and how we live. But be human, especially in this age of autonomous machines. And finally, the future is yours. So, build it. And with that, I'm open to Q&A or more discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. That was really thought-provoking and super relevant to anyone working in AI, not just data engineers. I think as a data scientist, it was also really useful to get your thoughts on how it's going to impact that field as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, thanks for finishing up a week worth of great talks
yeah, of course.
with Data Science Festival. We're going to be back. We're going to be back soon next year, May, for an in-person event. Yeah, I'm happy to take the questions. They're all going to be in the Q&A feature on Zoom. So yeah, if
Yeah,
anyone has any questions, otherwise I've got a few questions already that
sure.
can be asked. Yeah, the first one is how might the popping of the AI bubble affect what you're saying in your talk?
I think the bubble is going to pop. I mean, you can already see this in the stock markets and in the bond markets, more importantly. So I think you're going to see something happen. If you ever, as a bit of advice too, if you ever want to know where the world is going, just watch the bond markets. It's smart money. They don't. It's a good barometer. So I think you're going to see a correction soon. But that doesn't mean that AI is not useful. And in fact, a lot of the best innovations have happened in times of constraints, in times of scarcity. And so what I think what you're already seeing is, you know, people are starting to rethink the current model that we're in right now, no pun intended. The emphasis over the last few years has been scaling, through data centers, through more compute, the building of bigger large language models. We've run out of data though, basically, right? The only data we have left is within the walls and confines of companies, but publicly available data, we've tapped that out. And so what you're seeing is now kind of a refresh. Jan LeCun left Meta or is leaving Meta to go start his, world model company where he's going to focus on different approaches to AI because he's not convinced that LLMs are where we need to go. Ilya Sutskever said basically the same thing on a podcast this week, where he's looking at. So he was the chief scientist at OpenAI before he left to do a safe superintelligence, and he's looking at, you know, what's the next step for LLMs, right? So I think what the exciting thing is you're gonna see I think more advances in this area, and possibly because there's less money available, but also because I think this is the right thing to do. Imagine that the human brain requires what 20 watts of power to run, and yet we're trying to think of data centers that need tens of gigawatts or more of power to make these models. I mean, the discrepancy between the human brain and the amount of power needed to generate ever bigger models, I think, is quite vast. And so I remember I was talking to somebody who was working on Stargate, the $500 billion initiative in the U.S. to build more data centers. And I just turned to my friend, actually, we were at a cocktail party, and I asked her, like, wouldn't it be interesting if they could just divert some of that money to better math so we could figure out maybe different ways of doing this versus just spending a $500 billion on data centers? But then I was like, that's a dumb question because there's too much money. But I think you're going to see, yeah, different ways of AI very soon. I think that's going to be exciting to see. There's a lot of smart people working on this. But what you are seeing right now is sort of the pendulum has swung basically. There's two schools of thought in the AI world. There's the symbolic world and the statistical world. Right now, we've swung very heavily in statistics, right, for the last couple decades. It used to be the symbolic world, and I think you're going to kind of see the pendulum go back to symbolics. You're already kind of seeing this with graphs and ontologies and semantics, but these are tools. But like I think you're going to see kind of a bridging of both worlds. So it was a good question. What else we got here? We actually got a few questions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you be the MC on that.
Should I read them? Yeah, so one question is how do you see agentic systems evolving to manage model coordination, especially when multiple specialized models need to negotiate on or prioritize tasks without human in the loop?
I'm excited to see where this goes too. I have a lot of friends working on this problem right now, so it's anyone's guess. But agent orchestration and model coordination is a very hot topic right now. So yeah, I would say TBD. I don't really have an opinion on where it goes yet, but I think that who's even Maxime Bouchemin, the guy who created Airflow, he's working on something cool. I think Agor or whatever it is, and I think that's pretty cool to see. So he's going back to orchestration once again. But I pay attention to what people like that are doing. But yeah, open-ended question. I don't have an answer, but I think it's necessary.
Great. Yeah, moving on to the next one. Where do you think the price of intelligence will settle? Is it priced as a function of energy and capex, or will it eventually compete with human labor cost? How soon will it become more expensive to build with code assist tools?
I mean, I'll give you an example from my friend, right? The small business owner I was telling you about at the beginning of my talk. Um, he had a very interesting comment, right? And so he said, in a lot of cases, he's reviewing the software contracts he has with current vendors because he's thinking, well, if I can just kind of build the solution that I need, I don't need. So I asked the audience, like, if you purchase software or use an app, like, what percentage of the total functionality of that application do you actually use? I'm guessing it's probably in the single digits, right? For most people, it's the upper left thing. It's file, save, or file, whatever. But like you're not using 100% of the capabilities. And so I think the opportunity is here to actually create applications that are tailored to your business using your domain expertise. That maybe is, a 5% of the way solution, but it's the 5% that you need. And so that's how I'd be evaluating the price of intelligence. Is like how does it make your life better? How quickly can you deploy that? And so forth. And so, I mean, that's how I'm evaluating it. And obviously, if you're a business owner like my friend, I mean, it's kind of a morbid example, right? But he was telling me that he built this entire accounting workflow that was done by his former employee Tara. And so what they're doing in their team is they're naming the AIs after the person that used to do that work. So, like, and because that, and he's not backfilling these positions. He's using AI to do these tasks. And again, like, so they're going to have agentic workflows pretty soon as well, where the agents look at documentation they have against standard operating procedures and use that as context to do tasks. And so super early days, but I think that that's maybe one lens to view it through. I think we're still super early in trying to figure out what the pricing model is. I think AI is very underpriced right now. Like I've told you, if you the group, if you're, I would be using tokens like crazy right now. I don't think these cheap subsidies last. I think eventually you'll go more towards a usage model because right now the numbers don't make any sense in terms of what the companies are charging the AI providers, for example, versus what it costs. They're all losing money in catastrophic form, but I think that that's a function of trying to gain market share. But I would be leveraging that as much as possible. I subscribe to the max plans of all the AIs, and I still feel like I'm getting a pretty good deal compared to what I'm getting out of it. And so, in terms of the second part of the question interview, will AI generated data lead to model performance slop? It's very possible, right? There's a collapse problem that always happens. And so I think model collapse. And so that's a very real thing. I do notice it's even when I use apps like Perplexity, for example, right? It'll cite articles that when you click on the article, it's actually an AI generated article from some random scraper site. So you're like, okay, if the feedback loop is going to be very hilarious to watch, which means that I think there's an opportunity for there to be some sort of vetting of data sources and so forth, and probably gold stamping the good ones. Because what is it? I think by next year, 90+% of the data on the internet will be AI generated, or maybe more. But if you look back to the data on the internet, it's always been mostly just crap anyway. It used to be just some sweatshop in the Southeast Asia making the slop, and now it's AI. But SEO, for example, I mean, you had SEO farms making content for decades, and so this just does it at a scale that humans couldn't do. But I think I got time for one more question.
But yeah, one question just came into the chat. There was another one. So beyond build, might Joe suggest a 5 or so step high level simple framework to get started on this build to produce and show, not tell?
Obviously understand the business. I would say that kind of goes without saying. I think understanding your business and what the business needs is going to be more important than skill than ever. I mean, it always seems to be that way, but I think especially now, especially when executives and business leaders can just get answers, quote unquote, from AI. I don't know if they're right or not. I think you need to be paying more attention to what the business needs than ever before and leveraging AI to produce solutions. So I don't know if I have a 5 step framework or whatever, but I would just say like there's an old thing in lean manufacturing. They call it the Gemba walk, which is you go and walk the floor and you understand what's happening. If you're a data practitioner, you need to be doing the same thing. Go talk to people, understand what they want. Help them get the right data they need to do their work. Because I think increasingly the work of data science is going to be behind the scenes, maybe in front of the scenes too. But it's about providing good data sets to people so they can use their co-pilots or whatever to do the work. But I think that's obviously remains to be seen. But that's one iteration I've been seeing lately. So. But to produce and show, not tell, I would say get out and understand what people want and show them. But the cool thing is you can go there with your laptop now and just like build right in front of them and just iterate on solutions. I think that's a big difference versus because where data projects die is that they take too long typically, right? Time kills everything. And so if you can shorten that feedback loop, from days or weeks to just minutes, maybe an hour, that gets you more embedded in the business and it gets you the credibility you need to keep working with the business. So I take one more question. Screw it. We got
Yeah, I
unless
think I
everyone wants
can
to take
do
off.
one more. One more.
Okay.
Yeah, so the last one is are tech entrepreneurs too biased and optimistic in their belief in what AI can do?
It depends what entrepreneurs you're talking about. If you're running an AI company, of course you want to be optimistic because you have to sell something. because there's no tech entrepreneurs not selling AI at this point. Well, very few. I know a few, but um, it is interesting. I feel like it's sort of this prisoner's dilemma where everybody has to play along with it. If you're a tech entrepreneur, you would be seen as sort of the stodgy old man, probably like myself actually, who's cynical and so forth. So you kind of have to play along with it, right? But I think when I talk to entrepreneurs behind the scenes, I think everybody knows what's going on. They're not, I don't think, blindly optimistic. They're not stupid, but the game you have to play, the optics you need to have is that AI is, it's amazing. Everything is awesome. We're killing it. Trust me, bro. So that's kind of how it is. So, but are they optimistic? You have to be optimistic to be an entrepreneur no matter what. But I think people are realistic. I mean, everybody knows this bubble's gonna pop, right? They may be optimistic on the surface, but there's nobody I know who's like, yeah, this continues at the current spending rates for sure. Not unless you see a corresponding rise in revenue. Doesn't happen. So awesome. Well, thanks, Adam, and thanks to everybody here. Hopefully, you got something out of the talk. But it's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And if people want to get more of Joe, then yeah, check him out on Spotify. I think it's the Joe Reis show, right?
It's also on YouTube. Yeah, go check it out. Yeah,
Yeah, nice one.
yeah.
So last session of the week. Thanks everyone for joining and just aiding this community. I think we have such a great data community. I've been part of it for a couple of years, and it's been a pleasure to be involved myself and had really great speakers come on and share some of their amazing views on AI.
Cool.
So thanks so much, Joe, and thank you
Yep.
everyone for joining. We'll end the session there.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers, bye.